Hi and welcome to TEC Bike Parts. We've had the BSA Goldstar for 5-6 weeks now. Unfortunately, about the first few weeks we had it, the weather was absolutely awful here, so we didn't get out on it too much. But we've now done most of the running in miles, so we're about to do a first service on it. I will probably do a separate video on that because I'm going to do the service myself. And I've entitled this video The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. It's going to be completely different to most of the reviews you've seen about it, because this is my own bike. I haven't gone to a dealer and borrowed one. We get all our own bikes to review and develop products for. So I'm going to be going in depth and looking at the bike and all the things I've had, my dealer experience up to now, riding experience, what I think of it, what I've done to improve it, what I think needs to be done, what I think BSA need to do to improve it, to catch up with some of the competition, which I think they're starting to get left behind, even though they've just come to market, because they took so long to get the bike to market. But we'll start off with what I like on the bike, and generally I'm not going to go over what everybody said. Yes, the clocks are very nice. Generally the look is very authentic. It looks like an old BSA. Strange enough, it doesn't tend to turn many people's heads when you're riding it around, apart from guys who are drawn the pension. Old age pensioners tend to look and think, that looks familiar, and they'll swivel around. Yeah, so if you're trying to impress young people, this is not the bike for you, I'm afraid. So I went for the Silver Sheen Legacy model for a couple of reasons. The main reason being I wanted the polished engine casings, because I think the silver painted look, it's just got a plastic look about it. It doesn't look quite right. But I think I like the way they've authentically done a lot of the things on the bike. I'm glad to see they listened to comments. Mine was one of them, about the oversized drain pipe. This pipe is still quite big, but it's sort of acceptable for looks wise. It was far too big before. You may have noticed I've actually taken the cover off here. Now this cover just, it went over here and covered the O2 sensor. Now personally I thought that wasn't necessary. I think they probably designed this when they had the bigger bore pipe in mind to get it more to blend in, but I think it's better looking without it on. But you know, let me know what you think, but that was a personal thought of mine. Yes, the people went on about the radiator. I think once you get used to the bike, you don't tend to notice it anymore. Now, when I first started riding the bike, I wasn't really sure if I liked it or not. I had a few little issues with it. The MIL light kept coming on, which is not an unusual thing with Euro 5 on bikes are new. The motor was very hunty and stally, and it didn't seem to want to tick over properly, and I thought, well, I'll persevere with it because it probably just wants to settle in. And as I thought, it was a very tight motor, and after about 150-200 miles it completely changed. The idle sort of settled down. It wasn't stalling when you opened the throttle anymore. Interestingly enough, what a lot of people don't realise on these BSA, you must let the MIL light go out before you start the engine. Now that does take about 4 or 5 seconds after you've turned the key on. So, and that can sort of upset the ECU because it hasn't gone through all its check procedure. So just bear that in mind if you're having problems with the MIL light coming on. You can reset it yourself by going through a procedure on the bike and waiting 30 seconds and stuff. Or I've actually made an adapter up to fit into the OBD2 port, where you can just reset it with a standard OBD2 reader. And you can also read the fault codes. And the most common fault code I was getting coming up on this was tick over speed not as accepted, which again points to the engine being tight and not wanting to tick over when it's cold. But again, this is all legacy Euro 5 emissions. So like most people, one of the first things I did was take the baffle out of the exhaust, and I'll do more on that later. And that did improve the sound a lot, but I found with the baffle out, it was an enormous baffle. It was actually really loud. It wasn't so much the loudness, it was the booming. it was constantly boom, 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 like a cough up in a drain pipe, that sort of sound, resonancy. So I've made up a small baffle with holes about approximately that sort of long, but it's a different internal construction to this. After many trials and errors, I've got that what I feel is just right. It's got a nice tone to it, and it just bolts straight in. Yeah, I mean, like I say, everybody's touched on all the points on these bikes. We're now getting into the areas where you would say it was adequate. The brakes are good to adequate. They're not exceptional. They're not bad for a single disc setup front and rear. But you know, if you're coming off a faster, better brake bike, you're going to find them adequate at best. They're probably about right for the class it's in. Tyres, again, they're fine for the job. They do. You will find them a little bit skittish in the wet. But what I did find is with just a medium-sized bike like this, a 150 tyre on the back is probably a bit too much on profile for it. I think it would probably been better with a 130 on, would assisted the steering. But I've got some more comments to make on handling, and I'll go into that later on in the video when I get into the bad section. I love what they've done with the foot pegs and the brake and gear lever. These are all quality items. I would say they're much better quality than what you find on an equivalent Royal Enfield. Royal Enfield seems to lose interest when it gets lower down on the bike for some reason. I like the look of the exhaust. I was considering decatting it, but to be perfectly honest, the performance and the sound are fine where it is at the moment. So I've not gone there at all. I like the fact that it comes with alloy rims as standard, but disappointingly the spokes are not stainless, they're just chrome plated. So you'll need to keep an eye on them if you're riding in the winter. Performance wise, like I say, I haven't really given it the beans. I've had it up to about 80-ish mile an hour. It's very smooth. It doesn't feel like a single when you're on the move. And if you couldn't hear it, you wouldn't know it was a single. I mean, this is a well tried and tested motor. It's been used for 20 odd years in various guises. But this is I think this is the first fuel injected version, but I'm not sure on that one. And obviously, again, to get the Euro 5, they've had to make some changes to it. Normally, in the previous guise of this motor, it would have had twin front pipes and maybe twin carburetors on it. And to go to a single throttle body and single exhaust, they've obviously, again, had to make some changes to the motor. But it picks up and goes quite well. I was a bit disappointed that they didn't polish this casing as well, because I think it would have gone in much more in keeping the rest of the bike. But that's just a personal thing. Right, I think that's about all the good things on the bike. Now let's go to some of the bad things. Right, so now we get on to the bad. I'll start with the suspension, I think, first of all. Again, I'm not the first one to say this, that the suspension is not great. I don't even think it's adequate. These rear shocks, though they look the part, they're made by Gabriel. The Gabriel shocks that the Interceptor used to have on they were probably adequate as the best you could say. They were horribly hard. Now these, I think, to try and get away from the hardness, they've made the dampers softer, and they've also made the springs quite soft. I mean, to get the squish right, I was actually on the top setting on the spring as a solo rider, so you couldn't, I don't think you could have taken the pillion passenger quite easily. But the biggest issue I had with them was virtually no damping. The bike was pogoing about all over the place, and even if you just bounce the bike up and down, if you've got one of these yourself, give it a try, and you'll see that the bike bounces like the shocks are worn out. And obviously that's not keeping the bike under control when you're starting to ride on bumpy roads. So I tried various shocks on it. I put some gas shocks on, and yes, they were better, but they were a little hard. Now, I didn't think they looked quite right on the bike either. So I put a pair of shrouded shocks on, just a basic pair of oil damped shrouded shocks that you would use on a normal BSA. Obviously we had to change the mountings and spring rates and stuff like that. I put them on 2 clicks from the bottom like you would normally, and rode the bike, and I haven't touched them since. I think it's one of those situations that don't touch that setting, because I think it's great. And I've ridden it till now with those, absolutely fabulous. Nice and comfortable, holds the road really well. Even on some terrible roads, it copes with it fine. Again, I mean, they're not a high performance shock, but this is not a high performance motorcycle, so they suit it really well, and they're 100% better than the shocks that were on, and these aren't expensive either, so that's a real must to do, I thought, on this bike. And when I put those on, I started enjoying the bike a lot more. That and the baffle that I made up for it, it made the bike feel a bit better with the presence of the sound, but the fact that it controlled the back end and the comfort of the back end was much better. Unfortunately, because I've done the back as normal with suspension, it highlighted that the front suspension wasn't very good. Now, that's the springs out of the front. Now, they're actually a bit on the hard side, the spring, and it was very bumpy, crashy on the front end. But they're a linear spring, they're not a progressive spring. I'll tell you what happened with it was actually that harsh. I went over a speed bump and the headlight shattered. I don't know if you can see, there's actually no glass in it, but all I can put that down to was the shock coming through the front end, because I was only doing 5 miles an hour. There was no other traffic around it. It couldn't have been a flying stone or anything. Maybe it had been damaged by a flying stone and the bump that broke it, but it looks like it's radiated away from the rim, the actual damage. So it could have been just a tight rim fitting or whatever, but I'll go more into that later. So the front end, we've fitted a set of progressive springs. We've worked with various different rates, and I've also added a pair of adjustable fork tops for the preload, so you can actually trim the bike better for the squish and the angle front to rear. So that, again, that's made a big improvement. Don't get me wrong, you can still improve these forks more, but as an easy, cheap fix, that may be as far as people want to go. You're probably talking about £130 or £140 for what I've done there, just off the top of my head. You could go and start putting emulators in the fork and drilling the damper rods out. Now that's a lot more work. You have to strip the front end down to do that. These all just go in from the top, and I'll do a video on how I did that, just so people know what we're doing. The forks are basically the same as what's on the Interceptor and on the modern Triumphs. They're just basic conventional 41mm forks. And I actually did a video a while ago on how to improve the forks on a Triumph Bonneville stroke scrambler, and what applies to that applies to these as well. You can drill out the damper rods, add YSS fork emulators and adapters that we make, and that allows you to adjust the compression and the rebound damper, and also takes the shock of fast compression damping away, because it's got a pressure relief valve built into the emulator valve. One of the things that I didn't like, I mean, I was basically sold on this bike as having chromed mudguards, and I said chrome metal, but oh yeah, chrome, and they're not, they're actually plastic. Very good looking plastic, but they're plastic. On the subject of plastic, this is plastic. The side panels are plastic. The chain guard's plastic. A bit more plastic than what I expect on a BSA replica. They've actually put a metal cover on here, and these are metal, which is good. I really wouldn't want these in plastic. I can understand why they've done side panels, because they would probably be quite difficult to do in metal, but the original bike had all metal parts like that. So now we're getting on to the ugly parts on the bike. Personally, I thought the mirrors were quite sticky being ugly, so I put some small bar ends on. Now, these are really neat and they go straight on, but some people may find them a little small. I find they're okay personally, but I may, for better visibility, put a set of normal type bar ends on, like they go on this Royal Enfield here. Just to give you better visibility, and they're not stuck up in the air here. Now the other thing, the real ugly thing, was this article stuck up here on on the handlebars. On a retro bike it looks totally out of place to have something from the 21st century stuck up there, a big lump of plastic. Now BSA need to learn from Royal Enfield here, because the Meteor has a USB port up here, but it's literally hidden underneath the clutch, hidden really well out the way. Switchgear, really cheap bargain basement stuff. I don't particularly like this at all. Again, they need to take a leaf out of Royal Enfield, who have produced lovely alloy switchgear now. Again, this is where they built this looking at the first generation Interceptors, and Royal Enfield have moved on another 4 years since then, and this is one of the areas where they've really leapt ahead. The little idiot light, again, like everybody says, in bright sunlight it's very difficult to see, and it's also quite dangerous. The amount of times I've turned around a corner and carried on up the road with my left or right indicator on, because I simply can't see it in the bright sunlight. I'm going to have to fit a buzzer or some different lights to it, because it is dangerous. You'll get a car pulling out in front of you and you'll wonder why he's doing it. Catwalk cap, though, it looks quite nice. It's a real fiddle. You cannot do this with your gloves on. If you do, you'll end up dropping the cap, and I'll show you why. The cap doesn't twist like a lot of people think. The cap like this twists off. It doesn't. It's like a car type parallel cap. You've got to hold it and turn the key and jiggle it. It doesn't come up automatically. Now, what will happen here, I'm looking to show you, but what will happen is a lot of people attempt to pick it up by the key, and what happens is it drops off the key and bounces down the tank. Another issue is here, we've got bare metal, and it's starting to rust already around the tank. Now, you have to keep a close eye on this, because you can't have bare unfinished metal where it's going to get damp, and there's a red rust all the way around here at the moment. So, you know, again, have a look and see what Royal Enfield has done on the Super Meteor BSA, and it might give you some ideas what you can come up with here. It's also extremely difficult to get back on there. Finish, generally the finish is quite good on it, but I did have an issue straight away that I noticed when I got the bike back. There was a few little flecks of paint coming off around the edge of the tank. I thought, what's going on here? I thought it was just down to something about the welding of the tank. But as you can see, there's actually quite large areas of the paint coming off around the bottom. And the reason why, you can see quite clearly why it is, they haven't keyed the chrome up underneath properly. There's areas where the chrome is bright and shiny and the paint simply hasn't taken to it, whether it hasn't been either keyed or cleaned properly prior to painting. It's just flaking off. And it's not just in one point, it's in like 4 separate areas where it's doing it. The price that they're selling this bike for, you would expect better quality than that. They're trying to be at the top end of the sector that they're in. What you've got to bear in mind is you can buy 2 Royal Enfield Meteors for the price of one of these, and the paint quality finish on the Meteor is better than this, so they need to up the game there. Right, my experience with dealing with BSA dealer and BSA in particular, unfortunately not good up to now. Well, it starts off with the order. I was promised and promised and promised like everybody was, and it was probably about 6 months later arriving, which, I mean, I quite accept that. With a new bike they will have teething problems getting it registered, this, that and the other, but that's not my main gripe. One of the biggest issues I had was with the paint on the tank. I got it home and I rang the dealer up straight away and I said there's a couple of small patches of the paint's flecking off the tank. Now, said I will report it to BSA and get back to you. 3 weeks went past, still no contact, so I contacted them again. Oh, can you send some photographs? I said, well, I've already sent you 3 photographs. Oh, well, BSA want 5 photographs, so I've sent 5 photographs, but it's literally just flaking off, which is not good when they're trying to be competitive with companies like Royal Enfield, who you can buy a Meteor for half the price of this, and the paint works better quality. So yeah, they need to get their act together with that, and they also need to get their act together with warranty. So we had that, and we had the broken headlight. Now when I rang them up about the broken headlight, I didn't even try to claim warranty on that. I thought, well, they'll probably say it's been a stone chip, you know, and I couldn't prove otherwise. But I rang them up and I said, well, can I order one up? Oh yeah, they'll get me a price and availability. So they rang back a couple of hours later. Sorry, BSA haven't got any. They don't know when they're getting any, but it could be several months. Well, and he says, but the good news is it's really cheap. I said, oh, how much is really cheap? £189. I thought, well, that's not particularly cheap for a 7-inch headlight unit. And I said, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm off the road. I'm sorry, sir, but we don't have one. Fair enough. So I thought, well, I'm not going to be beaten. So I had to dig around the garage, and I actually had a Norton Commando one, which I got off a friend. 7-inch Lucas light, and it fits straight in. Even plugs straight in because it's just an H4 bulb. And it actually looks much more authentic than the original modern looking glass that they had in. It gives a better beam as well. So, we had a result there, but, luckily enough I managed to get that sorted out. Now the next problem I had with BSA was, I thought, well, I'm 200 miles away from the dealer. It's a 200 odd mile round trip to the dealer, and he's taking a whole day off. I thought, well, I'm not going to go there for the first service. I'm a mechanic. I'm going to do it myself, and I'm quite familiar with this Rotax engine. So I said, well, all I need is an oil filter. So I rang up and said, can I order an oil filter? Oh yes, no problem. $14.95 plus VAT. I mean, we'll get you one now at the post tonight. I thought, great. So I started gearing up to do the service. 5 o'clock I get a phone call from the stores department saying, oh, I'm sorry, all the oil filters are reserved. I said, what do you mean reserved? He said, oh no, I can't sell them. Strange. Obviously they wanted to keep them just for doing services, and they didn't want to sell them to people who wanted to do them themselves, which is a bit naughty. And he said, but I've been on the BSA and they've got none, and none of the other local dealers have got any. So fair enough. So I thought, I'm not going to be beaten by this again. So I've dealt with Royal Enfield in the past with Superb motorcycles, so a really good dealer. So I give them a ring up because I know they're a BSA dealer as well. And yeah, we've got oil filters in stock, no problem, and I got one next day. So that was probably just a dealer thing, not a BSA thing. So, take from that what you will on these bikes, but this is a very competitive market, and if customers are not going to be satisfied with the service they're getting, they're going to go elsewhere. It's as simple as that. So I'll keep you informed in the future videos on how these things turn out. Like I say, I'm not mentioning the dealer because it's maybe not his fault, and I don't want to call somebody for it. I've been there myself, I know what happens. You get caught between a rock and a hard place with manufacturers and importers. So we'll let that one develop, and I'll keep you up to date on it. We're talking about adequate things again. The brake and clutch lever are non-adjustable. Again, they look very basic. Again, the level, the Interceptor was in 2018. The Interceptor have now moved on. They've now got adjustable, much nicer levers on them. And again, they need to up their game if they want to go head to head with Royal Enfield and the Interceptor. Now the seat is removable, but you have to remove the left-hand side panel. Now the left-hand side panel isn't lockable, and neither is the seat cable operating underneath. So literally somebody can pull your side panel off and take your seat off. It is what it is. I've modified mine now, so it has a different cable release on it. But for the sake of a few pounds, wouldn't even do that. It is a cable system, so they could have just put a key-operated cable mechanism on it, somewhere even hidden on the bike, just so that the seat is a lot more secure. At the moment, it's not even convenient to get off because you've got to pull the side panel off. Now, the first time I pulled this side panel off, it actually split the rubbers. They're so tight. So, and I had to use a lot of force. I thought it was going to pull the pegs off the side panel, and it was literally because I hadn't put any silicone grease on the pegs. They're all little niggles, but again, if you broke the side panel trying to get it off, you wouldn't be happy. Another issue I've got is the bike only comes with a side stand. Now, the side stand leans over an awful lot, and if you get it on a hill that's going the opposite way, it's almost like the bike's going to fall over. And you've got no alternative. You've always got to have it point uphill when you park it, and be very careful where you place it. There's no option of a centre stand, and there's nowhere on the frame. It hasn't been designed to take a centre stand either. Now you think if you're going to do that, you would have put some mountings on and put bobbins on the swinging arm, but they haven't done that either. So you have to mess on jacking the bike up underneath so you can clean the wheels or whatever. So this bike of this era always had a centre stand on. Fair enough, even if you want to charge extra of making an option, but not to give the owner any option to be able to get the bike up off the ground other than use a wobbly paddock stand under the swinging arm and probably scratch the paint when you're doing it. I don't think it's acceptable. I'm going to look at, I've got an idea of what we can do with something with that at the moment, and I'm working on it. I'm glad to see that you actually get a toolkit. Hopefully you don't actually need it, and a first aid kit. Again, I hope you don't need it, but they're under there. All this under the seat it's not exactly pretty. I'm actually starting to get a bit of rust here already. I have to watch out for that. Yeah, you've got access to your battery and your fuse box and your ODB port, which is here, but you need an adapter for. If enough people are interested, we're thinking about making up some adapters for these, and maybe even doing a one with a dedicated ODB2 reader that you can cancel fault codes, because you're probably going to need it if you don't want to keep going back to the dealer when the bike's new. Yep, your oil tank is here, and it's got a dipstick on it. Again though, the bike's got to be level, so you've got to start jacking the bike up to check the oil, which is a bit ridiculous when the bike hasn't got a centre stand. Yeah, people are going to moan on about that, I think, a little bit, but it is what it is. We'll have to see what we can do about it. Now again, here at the back, this just doesn't look authentic or pretty at all. I think it looks downright ugly myself, and I'm looking at ways of something I can do with this at the moment. But it's not a straightforward, simple thing to do, because we've got a plastic mudguard. You don't really want to start drilling this anyway. So we'll get there. I'm working on it now. Basically, that's it for now. So for all I've been calling it in BSA, and that, I do actually like the bike to ride it. It has got a very authentic 1960s middleweight bike feel to it. One of the things that really contributes towards that is the riding position, the ergonomics, the angle of the leg and hand and everything. And now we've got that stupid USB port and mirrors out the way. The view of the clocks as well, it gives you that 60s classic bike experience without the downsides, without the breaking down, without the reliability, without having the kickstart. And generally, I like the bike to ride it. It has a very different feel to something like the Royal Enfield Super Meteor, or even the Royal Enfield Interceptor. You know, once you get into the mindset of it, you actually really enjoy riding the bike. It's not a motorway bike. It's a bike that's happier on B roads and maybe sweet and air roads. Now, I've got a 350 Meteor, which, like most people, find it just that little bit lacking for when you come to overtaking or riding at a sustained high speed. Whereas this bike has that bit of extra oomph. So if you found that you didn't go for something like a bike like that because it didn't have the power, this bike it'll easily do the speed limit, no problem. It'll do 100 miles an hour. You probably have to work it a bit harder to get there, but it's happy in the 70-80 mile an hour range without even breaking a sweat. Fuel economy, at the moment I'm not riding it fast. It's doing about 65 miles to the gallon. Hopefully that should improve a little bit when the engine loosens up a bit more as well. And again, if you watch the subsequent videos, I'll give a bit more of an update of that. I haven't really been accurately monitoring it up to now, but I will do once the bike's settled in. Hopefully the next video we're going to do is an update on what's happening with the warranty issue. I'm going to do a first service on it. So we'll see you soon, and thanks for watching.